Let's rock.
Let's go.
We got someone new today.
That's right, baby. Well, hello, and welcome to the Rock Metal Podcast. I'm your host, John Harris. On my right-hand side is my right-hand man, Gabriel. On my left-hand side is, I don't know if I want to call her my left-hand lady. That might be misconstrued. But
Well, she's my baby sister. Here in Daddy's lap, we have my baby sister.
Avila the Believer. So we've got Gabe's the Babes, Avila the Believer, and I'm John. Today on Rock Metal Podcast, we have Slaves to Fashion, who has a new album called History of Heavy Metal, which was released in February of this year. And we'd actually had Slaves to Fashion on last year to talk about a couple of singles while this was in the works. So now Torfinn is back to share some more information about this album now that it is actually available. So Torfinn, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. What are you doing? Stop it. How is life in Norway these days?
We just had another local lockdown 3 days ago or 4 days ago. So it's ups and downs, and we're not getting rid of the pandemic. But now the vaccines are, in motion. So hopefully we have a release gig in 2 months. Postponed release gig, of course, because we should have had the concert on the day the album came out on the February 13th. But we're optimistic. Hopefully everything will be good and even better than before.
Perfect. She's excited.
She likes metal.
How is the vaccine schedule over there? Like, are you able to get vaccinated at this time?
No, I think I'm actually the last one to get it because I'm pretty healthy and I'm in the, exactly wrong age to get a vaccine. But hopefully my parents, they are about 74, 75 years old. They're just waiting to be called in for their vaccine. So I think we're a bit slower than you.
Maybe.
Is that right?
Maybe.
Canada, yeah.
Well, I think it might depend provincially as well in Canada.
Yeah.
Where I'm at, it's a little up in the air. My in-laws, who are like in their 60s,
yeah,
they're going to be getting their vaccine here, I think this week or next week.
Oh, yeah, but that's faster than here then. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm waiting to see what's going on with my age group, as well as I work in a group setting. So that might push me a little bit ahead.
Yeah. That's right. I'm a teacher, so I could be pushed ahead, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of teaching, you're going to be teaching history class here, History of Heavy Metal.
Yeah.
Is that the class that you teach?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I started this project was because I did some. I have one lecture every year about the history of heavy metal in the music class at school. So it was actually the starting point for the whole idea of making this album. Absolutely, I do that at school sometimes, and also I have some lectures around in the community, like in the culture center or at the bar or at events and festivals and like that. So absolutely, there's some teaching involved in this album project. Yeah.
Okay, so we can actually get pretty deep then, because from a scholastic point of view, if that's the right word to use, what differentiates different kinds of metal? Is it tunings? Is it keys? Does it not matter? Could this whole thing be in standard tuning in the key of C, or A minor? What is it that differentiates, say, for example, just because I'm looking at it right now, the Power of Metal track number 8 and the New Wine track number 9? What differentiates those two that makes one power metal, say like Hammerfall, and one new metal, like say Linkin Park?
I think it's different genre traits that differentiate these genres, but There's one thing that stands out. I think it's the vocal style. The vocal style is very important. You could say every subgenre has its own vocal style. Like the power metal, it's pretty often high pitch. It's melodic. It's a sing-along, melodies. While new metal, for instance, has the element of rap, and it's more modern in its approach. It's very, what can I say, modern and American sounding, maybe, so they don't go really high up. There's more of that growling thing in between. So vocal style is definitely maybe the most important aspect of different genres. But also, like you say, tunings. Power metal is not so low sounding in the tunings. New metal often were, pretty down tuned, like they put an extra string in the guitar and went to the B, So
this is my beautiful wife. She's making a guest appearance.
Hello.
Bam.
Samantha Franca. That's the name.
We got the whole fan bam finally in the scene here. Anyway, so you were saying they added an extra string, so that's starting to get into like Korn territory, because they showed up on the scene not only with 7 strings, but they tuned them down a full step. So we were talking about being in A.
Yeah, I know. And there's some bands going even lower than that, So it's it went a little crazy with down tuning. But I think absolutely, if you look at the there's something going on in the 90s when it's like there's a modern direction, with the low tunings and everything, and there's the traditional, direction with where the power metal bands are at, because they were actually, I would say, a reaction to what happened with the alternative thing, the grunge thing and everything with the new metal, So power metal became, a alternative to the alternative, if you like to put it that way. Mm-hmm. So I guess traditional metal fans have problems with the alternative styles, and often the more modern alternative metal fans, they have problems with the power metal thing. That's at least how I look at it. So heavy metal is in some way a big happy family, but there's also differences in approaches and image and those kind of things.
It's funny because for I think a lot of people, metal is one big happy family. However, I can't even count anymore how many times over the years I've heard in one way or another, that's not metal. And then they insert some reason. Years ago, at this point, well over 10 years ago, I was in a band and we had a female singer, and we were doing something similar to like a Nightwish. And something we heard a lot being in North America was, well, that's not metal because you have a chick singer.
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't heard that one before, but it's pretty typical, that phrase, that's not metal. That's a pretty typical phrase, When I have these 2 hours, it's a bad word to say, I have a lecture in a bar where people drink beer and get drunk, but I don't find a better word for it. But I have a presentation, about the history of heavy metal with sound examples and stuff like that. And when I go chronologically from 1970 all the way through everything, and at the end of it, I'm at the metalcore thing, or before that, the new metal thing. And after those presentations, there's always some guy coming up to me saying something like, that last tunes you played, they really sucked, man. And I'm like saying, okay, yeah, maybe you didn't like it, but it's part of the metal history. Didn't you hear me? It really sucked. So it's like they don't look upon those genres like real metal. So there must be something else they think is the traits for real metal. So what is that? It has to be. It's not a sound, because it sounds like metal. There's distorted guitars. It's heavy. I would say it's definitely some kind of heavy metal. But some people don't think it is. So what is it? It must be something else. It has to do with some kind of presentation or image or genre mixing or taking the rap thing in or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I find this aspect of the metal family really fascinating. All these discussions about what is real metal, why is this thrash metal, why is this metalcore? So even on a forum on the Facebook, like this on Norwegian metal forum the other day, there was a huge argument about, one guy said metalcore is not real metal. So why isn't it? Of course it's metal. Yeah. It's down tuned, it's heavy, it's in your face, it's got everything of the heavy metal, traits, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that one in particular I hear a lot of, and maybe it's the attitude or whatever, but there's I don't know if you've seen the memes about what certain guys who listen to metal look like, and the meme about the metalcore guy.
yeah. You got it, because there's words, I'm looking for the word stereotypes, linked to the different kinds of metal, so like you got the emo girls listening to Linkin Park, and you got the guys dressed up as Vikings and warriors and having role play in the woods, and they're listening to power metal. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, well, it's funny because as we're chatting about this, I also do martial arts, and the same conversation almost happens in martial arts too. Where people are saying, like, oh, I do, karate, and that's the real martial art, or, well, I do taekwondo, and that's the real martial art. And then they start getting into subgenres of, oh, well, you do, like Shotokan karate. Well, I actually do Okinawan Shuri-ryu. Like, they start getting into, and conversations of, which is the best martial art. And like at the end of the day, it's whichever one you're willing to practice every single day and get good at, So
I agree. I think this is a really interesting subject, also because we did this project, with going through all these subgenres, and of course I myself have some subgenres that I like more sound-wise or maybe also image-wise, but I think it opened up my eyes or let's better say ears for some new kind of music, because I think psychologically, if you actually sit down and try to listen more than one time or the whole song through, or the whole album, mm-hmm. I think we have a tendency to like more things that we actually think we will like. So yeah, and it's also a case of how we want to present ourselves. We want to be what's the word, associated with a certain subculture, or I don't want to be seen like a person saying, I don't want to be seen as an alternative grunge person. I hate that stuff, or I don't want to be looked upon as a guy that likes power metal. So I definitely it has more to it than the music, all these things. Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would certainly agree with that. And the funny one for me is I immediately focus in on track 9, The New Wine, because that's my high school years right there. I was in like grade 6 or 7 when Korn really hit, and I don't even think it was called new metal at that time. I don't think it really was until maybe actually after Linkin Park. I don't remember when that term started actually getting thrown around, but that is like my formative years right there. So I immediately tuned into that one to kind of hear what you guys did. And I mean, really good attempt at what I'll call the bounce riff and the bounce tempo and the detuning. And I guess how conscious of a choice was it to really exaggerate the I'm mad at my parents kind of I'm because you call it whine because they're whining, right?
Yeah. What's it called? One word has different meanings. I think it was. I think everything we did here. I've been trying to be conscious about everything, every little word about in the lyrics, and. What can I say? Those bands, not Korn so much. Maybe they were more about a general anxiety there, I think. But those later bands, they were more got even more popular, like Linkin Park. They were. It was a revolt against the established society, and you don't understand us. It was like a reaction to the parents. It was reaction to everyone that was mainstream and successful. So I think it's it was like in the beginning a genre for youth that didn't really got accepted by the other youth. But again, what's the difference? If this was like in the later part of the 90s, it was just the same thing in 1980 when it was the same kids that got into Iron Maiden and Judas Priest about that time. And I'm pretty certain it was long before I was born that it was this exact same thing in 1970 when people started listening to Black Sabbath. That was like a reaction to the life of the parents, and you don't understand us. And heavy metal in its different forms always is like a reaction to the establishment, sounds. And if you don't, what can I say? When Iron Maiden got mainstream in 83, 83 maybe in America, they had to find something because they harder stuff to get that reaction. So thrash metal got the thing for the youth that wanted to protest, and then thrash metal got mainstream on the big labels. Then you had to get something else like death metal for the kids that really felt like they belonged. So I think it's really the same story repeating itself, and that's interesting too. I don't know, because maybe we can say the same about the metalcore wave that is the newest really big wave in new metal, I think, the American wave. So it's always about a reaction to the establishment. And when the established protest thing gets mainstream, we have to get something new. And it will be exciting to see the next 10 years. Will there be some new reactions in heavy metal like that? Yeah.
Let's see. What else is there? What else can we chat about here? There's so many things that we could chat about. The funny thing is you mentioned, the reaction to the establishment. I immediately went to thrash metal. I said that's thrash metal, at least from my perspective. And somebody older than me could say same thing about, like you mentioned, about Black Sabbath. And the Beatles before that, and Elvis before that.
Absolutely, and the controversial term grunge movement, was also a reaction to everything going on in the 80s. So, but I haven't seen like we have that's the last song on the album called "Too Close to See Clearly," because like a historian, you can't really see what's been going on the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So in 10 years, maybe we'll see what was really the thing between 2010 and 2020. That would be interesting. So maybe we should do a revised version of the album in 10 years then, to to tell the story, tell a better version of the story in the late period up to 2020.
Yeah. I mean, as far as the last 5 years, from my perspective on this show, you mentioned metalcore, that's gotten increasingly more popular. And not even necessarily from the American side, but from the Australian side. It seems to be a pretty big movement in Australia, New Zealand, that area. And it seems to be absolutely massive in Europe, especially in Germany. I've had lots of German metalcore bands on of varying degrees, and it's getting to the point where bands are now tuning down a full octave. So they're back at E standard, but they're down an octave, which is obnoxious.
But I think it's really cool. But you know, the metalcore thing. What's interesting about the metalcore thing is that it doesn't seem to die. You know, it just grows, and there's a metalcore metal tree that's evolving. You know, growing in different directions. You got new metalcore, you got progressive metalcore, you got melodic metalcore, you got many different types of metalcore. So many other subgenres have in some way faded away, but metalcore doesn't seem to do that. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a band I heard recently. I can't remember exactly what they were called, but what struck me about the sound, Torfinn, especially speaking of, you know, what's coming next, is I immediately heard something very 90s-esque, kind of somewhere between that post-grunge, early alternative era. However, the modern production level on it had elements of doom metal in it.
Yeah.
And so I almost thought to myself, is this what the 90s would have sounded like if they had the technology, or is this a new thing that I'm listening to?
Yeah. I think that's pretty, what can I say, typical for like the last 25 years of metal, you know, this mixing of elements, mixing of subgenres, mixing of sounds, taking a sound from one subgenre into another subgenre and changing the vocal style a bit, and suddenly, whoa, you got something new. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why the big heavy metal tree has grown into so many different directions.
Yeah, beautiful. Now, last time around we chatted about, I believe it was Thrash of the Titans, which is cool because you guys had worked with the original engineer who worked with Ride the Lightning, I believe, correct?
Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All. Flemming Rasmussen from Denmark, he did all those 3 albums by Metallica, yeah.
Okay, beautiful. And then Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll, which I believe was the 80s glam metal tune, and you guys worked with a guy in LA for that one.
Bo Hill, yeah, which he did Rat, Warrant, Winger, like those bands, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did you end up working with anybody for, say, the power of metal, such as, I don't know, Fredrik Nordstrom's worked hand in hand with Hammerfall for almost the majority of their career, as an example?
On the power of metal, we were extremely lucky to get one of the other famous producers that is attached to a certain subgenre. We got Tommy Hansen, who did those 2 Keeper of the Seven Keys albums by Halloween. Yep. And he also did a lot of the comeback albums for Halloween in the 90s. So I think we were very lucky to get him to mix that song. Again, like I think I said last time, very exciting for us to we recorded these songs ourselves. You know, we have home studios, and we sent the mix to these producers, and it's really exciting to get the result back. And what can I say? A little looking for the word here. who am I to say to Flemming Rasmussen that he should turn up the guitar solo a bit, or tell Tommy Hansen to ease down on the double kick? That was a really strange thing. But these guys are all still in the business, and there was an element of I think they thought it was cool to be part of this project, but also, of course, they gotta earn a living like everyone else. So also there was an element of that, of course. Yeah.
I was going to say, you are a paying customer for their service, and that is every right you have to get the product that you are paying for.
That was what I was telling myself when I asked for those changes. Yeah.
Groovy. I mean, anybody else, like the new wine? Did you work with anybody that would have been prominent in that scene? I'm trying to think of a few names. There's one that I can see, but I can't really quite pull it out. But he had worked with everybody from Papa Roach to Korn, etc.
I think you're talking about Ross Robinson now, but he was, of course, we was discussing these things, in a perfect world with a multi-million budget, we would have tried to get Ross Robinson to do that song, of course, but he's still very much in the game, I think, and was out of reach for this project. Yeah.
Okay.
But it would have been the right man to do it, really. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That, or maybe Rick Rubin.
Also him, but he's more versatile. He did the latest Sabbath album, 13. He did Slayer in 1986, Rain and Blood. He's done a lot of stuff, but also he's done some really cool new metal stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm also thinking about I've noticed this. Sometimes there are metal bands that are just become safe territory, and there's bands that either everybody hates, even though they secretly listen to them. We'll say like Five Finger Death Punch as an example.
Yeah.
Or Nickelback. Something that has just become so incredibly popular that everybody wants to hate it, but they're selling out arenas, so that's an awful lot of people that like them. That's kind of an interesting thing. But then we also get to bands like, say, the Deftones, where that's safe territory. Everybody can like the Deftones. We don't argue about what kind of metal the Deftones are. We don't argue about what kind of metal Pantera is. It's like a safe zone. Or if they come out with a bad release, we just brush it under the rug and we don't talk about it and we forget about it. And if somebody brings up Risk by Megadeth, it's like, hey, yeah, whatever. It's okay.
I think you're right, but I don't know really what to make of that. Other than some bands just find their own thing, and stand aside of these subgenres, and some bands, they manage to innovate themselves just as much as they need to, and still sound relevant for those who like the last album. Iron Maiden, they haven't changed their sound a lot, No. It's really safe. Everyone loves Maiden. Metallica, on the other hand, really changed a lot,
Mm-hmm.
And they are very, everyone likes the old stuff Metallica. Everyone likes a Metallica concert. But many fans, metal fans, like to hate Metallica, or at least some albums or periods of their career. So I don't know. Taking chances, taking risks. It's if you take a chance by changing your sound on drastically from one album to another, you definitely take that risk. And what can you say? Metallica certainly tried to do that, and they did it. Mm-hmm. Iron Maiden didn't, but I don't know who got away best with it. I don't know.
It still waits to be known. Well, Torfinn, we've chatted about the album, History of Heavy Metal. We've chatted a bit lecture-wise of the history of heavy metal, people's reactions, emotions, and attitudes towards metal, the rise and growth of having 6 snare samples and then having more snare samples in your metalcore mix. Some of those mixes sound like you're riding a snare drum. You know, that's all you're doing, which is funny, but that's the way it goes. Power metal. We chatted about just about everything. I kind of stuck to the new wine because that's my stomping grounds. And then elsewise on this record, I have a soft spot for power metal and glam metal. So the rest of them I definitely have a decent respect for, but those are kind of my stomping grounds. You know, so that's definitely some cool stuff. I believe we've chatted about everything. Unless there's something that I missed, though, you can let me know.
No, I think it's cool. It's really cool to be on the show.
No, well, thank you, sir. Yeah. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
Hello, hello, or should I say goodbye, goodbye. Thank you so much for listening to the Rock Metal Podcast. I've been your host, John Harris. Please head over to our website at www.therockmetalpodcast.ca. There you can sign up for our newsletter and find out more information about today's show.